Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to be talking all about how to prep your garden for winter. The leaves are changing colors, the temperature is dropping, and it's time to start thinking about prepping the garden for winter. And today I want to just take a few minutes and talk about some of the tips to prep our garden for winter so that when spring rolls around, your garden is ready to hit the ground running. Now, we are mostly going to be focusing on the vegetable garden today, but honestly, most of these things apply to your flower beds as well as the vegetable garden. So number one is cutting back your perennials and all of the things that you had growing in the garden, your annuals, everything that's done for this season, with the exception of a couple of things. So some shrubs and things like that you don't want to cut back, obviously. And also there's certain perennials that I like to actually leave up. They're done for the season, but they add a lot of interesting winter interests such as grasses and sedums. A lot of those things also provide forage and shelter for wildlife. So some of those things that actually look pretty in the winter landscape, I like to go ahead and leave those up until spring. But everything that just kind of looks like flat and dead and gross, like hostas and different brunnera and things like that, they just need to be cut back because they just look like a wet mat of grossness. They actually harbor fungus and pests and things like that to the next year. So you definitely want to make sure that you cut all those things back. And then of course your annuals. So the things that you grew that were only good for this year anyway and are going to die as soon as the frost came, or maybe they're already dead, go ahead and cut back all of those things, clean the garden up, get rid of everything that can harbor disease, pests, and fungus for the next year. We just want to get that all cleaned up. Which brings me to my second thing. So here I'm sitting under my trellis here, and I have a butternut squash growing on this trellis, several plants of butternut squash, and we have a bunch of fruit left on this trellis. Now, because these vines are dead and it's time to cut them back, I can go ahead and harvest whatever fruit is left on this plant. So that brings us to number two, harvesting. Go ahead and harvest everything that is ready, anything that's left on vines and stuff that are done. Or left peppers, whatever is left over, go ahead and harvest, make your final harvest of the season, and then start to clean those plants out for the year. Number three, weeding and bed clean out. So whether you have raised beds like me or whether you're just planting in the ground, you want to make sure that you get on top of all of the weeds that were kind of left over from the previous year, and you want to clean out any debris that was left over. So any foliage that was left over or whatever is in the beds, go ahead and clean that out. Again, this can harbor pests and fungus and disease, so go ahead and just get that bed nice and clean. Number four, fall planting. Fall is actually an amazing time to plant a lot of things to get ready to just pick up and start growing in the springtime. During the fall, we like to plant garlic, asparagus, daffodils, crocuses, hyacinths, beautiful spring flowers that you think of. All of those things are planted now in the fall time. Which brings us to number five. Now, the same as we plant things for the spring, we actually have to dig some things up, because if you live in a place where it's too cold for certain things to winter over, now is the time to dig those things up, such as dahlia tubers and gladioluses. Make sure that you get all of those beautiful bulbs that won't survive the winter in your area dug up and stored properly for the next season. Number eight, covering the soil. Now this might be one of the most important things that I can tell you to do to prep your beds for the spring now in the fall time. It is so important that we cover the soil in our garden beds, whether that's in a flower bed or a vegetable bed. It's a raised bed garden, it does not matter. The soil needs to be covered. It needs to be protected. I heard a saying one time, and I absolutely love it. It says that Mother Nature is modest, cover her or she'll cover herself. And that is so true. If we do not cover the soil, then weeds will grow and things will sprout up and grow. And not only that, but also the soil starts to turn sort of dormant, and all of that lovely activity that we had going on, all that lovely life that we had during the summer will just start to recess further down into the layers of soil. And what we want to do is we want to build layers on top of the soil to encourage that activity to continue, to recharge the soil after it's grown vegetables and flowers and beautiful things for us all season. The winter time is really the time to recharge that soil and add things back into it and let all those beautiful things seep down into the rest of the soil and just prepare it all winter long for the next season. Now there are a couple of ways that you can cover your soil, which this is completely up to you. I think personal preference and kind of what you're looking for in your garden beds. So the first thing that you can use is plastic tarps. So typically you'll look at like the black plastic or the black underneath with the white plastic coloring on top, something like that, tarping it, whatever you want to use. You can use plastic tarping to cover your beds. Another great option is cardboard. You can use cardboard, layering it on top of the beds and then hosing it down, making it really wet to make sure that it doesn't just blow away on you. You can also use some rocks or stones on top of it to hold it in place, or a little bit of soil on top of it. Another great thing is to throw a layer of mulch on top of that layer of cardboard that you have. And all of those things, unlike the plastic that I mentioned previously, all these other things I'm going to mention after this actually aid the soil. They don't just cover it, which is good. It's good to cover it. I'd rather cover it than not do anything. But all these things I'm going to mention after actually help to develop better soil. Another great thing to mulch your beds with is leaves and grass clippings or straw. So that's actually what I'm going to use today. I'm going to use a mixture of leaves and grass clippings. When I mowed the yard the other day, my grass was a little tall and we had a bunch of leaves in the yard, and so it just all mulched up together. Now I have let that sit out in the yard for a couple of days. It's dried out. It's now more brown than green. It lost that like bright green color. It's more of like a dull green or brown color. And that is important. You don't want to put fresh, wet grass clippings down. I like to let them dry out a little bit more. But that's the layer that I'm going to use to cover my beds this year. I have used grass clippings to cover my beds for multiple years, and I love what it does to the soil. It makes it so fluffy and rich and just really pleasant to work in. Another great thing to cover your beds with is actually by planting them in them. You may have heard the term before, cover crops. So things like rye and wheat are amazing cover crops. Now you wouldn't really want to use something like this in your flower beds, but in a vegetable garden space, a raised bed garden space, it is amazing to add things like cover crops into your space. So what you would do is you would sow those here in the fall time. You would plant those over your space. You would let them grow, and eventually in the winter time they're going to die back. And then whenever spring rolls around, you're going to incorporate all of those dead plants back into the soil, and that is going to feed your soil. Now, because those plants die back in the winter, they actually like kind of fall over and cover the soil, kind of as if you were using grass clippings or anything else. But they also are then just feeding back into the soil. So cover crops are another awesome way to mulch your beds and add nutrients back into them. Another great thing to do in the fall time is actually have your soil tested, which is something that I've been wanting to do up here in the raised bed garden, and I just haven't yet. Because we started fresh with soil that we had bought and filled these, and I've just been adding compost and things to these beds, I would really like to test the soil and see what it's like. One reason that it's so great to test your soil now in the fall time is you can get those results back, and then you can add amendments to your soil now, and they can incorporate and break down over time and really condition your soil over the winter time so that when spring rolls around, hopefully your soil is on point. Now, one thing that I haven't really mentioned in this video yet is fall plants, as far as like brassicas, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, root vegetables like carrots and radishes and things like that. I haven't mentioned those because this is more prepping the garden for winter, like hard winter. Whenever I plant these types of things like cabbage and broccoli and root vegetables, I know that in the dead of winter, these things are going to die back at that point. So that's why I'm not really mentioning these things. But this is something that we do in the fall garden, especially where I live. I love to plant some of these things that can handle a little bit more of the cold and at least try to get some crops out of them before they do completely die back. The last thing that I want to mention today is covering crops. So if there is anything in your garden that you want to try to overwinter, maybe you do have some lettuce growing that you are going to put maybe a hoop house or like a small greenhouse thing over, or maybe, I don't know, you have some broccoli and stuff that you want to try to extend as long as you can. Covering crops in the garden is an awesome way to extend that season, at least for a little while, if not all season, depending on your climate and depending on how cold your winter gets that year. So I have shown in the past kind of this greenhouse frame that we had purchased, which comes with like greenhouse plastic that you can put over it. I will link the video in the description below for that. There are all kinds of products like that on Amazon that you can check out that can really help to extend your season. One thing that I will say is we live in a high wind area. So we kind of live in the valley, and I lovingly refer to it as a wind tunnel. Sometimes it gets very windy here, and that is the struggle that I have with covering things whenever we're talking about plastic and things like that. It's a little bit difficult to keep those things really nicely secured throughout the winter. There are also so many amazing things that I have seen people kind of DIY and build. I have seen so many cool projects where people build like these wooden boxes with like window tops in them that you can set inside your garden beds or on top of a certain section of your garden. That would be a little bit better in high wind situations like I'm dealing with now. One day I would love to build something like that. I think it would be really fun, and I think it'd be really beneficial as well to help extend the garden season. Well, that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope it was helpful. I hope you got some good information out of it about how to prep your garden for winter. I also wanted to let you guys know that the fall designs that we have on our shop are going to be available until October 31st, and then they are going to be gone. We're going to be taking them off. I don't know if some of the favorites will come back later and maybe next season or not, or we might just never get them again. So if you see a shirt that you absolutely love, I would encourage you to go grab it. Also, we are launching a new line on November 1st, which I am super excited about. And if you want to get early access to those designs and see what they are, we are launching them November 1st, but the only people who are going to have access to them are our journal subscribers. So if you have not heard about it yet, we are starting our own email newsletter called the EverCrest Journal, and it is going to have so much wonderful information on it. It's going to have gardening information, it's going to have recipes, it's going to have different content creators that we are featuring, and small businesses, and just new launching products and things like that. So I am so excited about the EverCrest Journal. If you guys have not signed up for it yet, I will put the link in the description below. Be sure you do. You're not going to want to miss it. There's going to be so much good stuff in there. I have been working on writing November's journal, and I think it's going to be great. I hope you guys love it. So it is a free subscription. You just have to put in your email address, and then you'll be signed up and you can get your free monthly EverCrest journal. If you guys would like to know more about prepping your garden for the fall time, be sure to check out our blog post that we posted as well. There's also going to be a fall prep checklist in there so that you can go through and just check everything off your list as you start to prepare for winter. So be sure to go check that out. There's also a link for that in the description below. So be sure to check out the description for that as well, and we will see you in the next video, guys.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting